Hello and welcome back to another episode of this week's watches. And this week, like every week, I say every single time, we have a great variety to bring to you guys and girls, from vintage Cartier, or neo vintage I guess you'd say. We're something very, very special, and it might just look, and I say just look, like a Louis Cartier tank, but it is far more special than that, and we'll touch up on that when we get to it. We also have two fantastic examples of Rolex Oyster Quartz, and what a great opportunity to have both at the same time. We also have some very affordable vintage, some affordable modern, and everything in between. This week really does tick the boxes for everyone, is what I'm excited to bring you. As always, I want to start off by saying a big thank you as well. Last week, another incredible week. This week, already a great week as well. And again, just want to touch bases on the latest in terms of what everyone's talking about, which is the market. Yes, the hype pieces certainly seem to be coming down, or have already come down, or have already hit where they are going to sort of level out. Would I call it a crash? No, you still can't walk into Rolex and go buy Daytona. There is no crash. Is there a correction? 100%. Is it affecting this kind of stuff? Not even close. We are still selling a lot of watches, and we're still buying a lot of watches. We're confident in the market. I would just say be cautious on the hype pieces. And by that, what I mean is the stuff that mostly has nicknames, right? The Hulk, the Batman, all these kind of watches. I would say just edge on the side of caution if you are buying at the moment. Whereas with this sort of stuff, I don't think you can go wrong. Interestingly, I watched a video by Federico Talks Watches, Delray Watch Company, and they said basically the same thing. You know, they don't seem too affected by it because they deal in the weird and unusual over there in the US, just the same as we do over here in the UK. So I feel fairly confident. But I just want to get that out there because I keep getting messages every day about it, to be honest with you. So that's my opinion and take on it all. Now, before we dive into the watches on the table, what's on wrist? I am wearing a watch that I have added to the personal collection. You will see there is another Mido Wyoming on the table, which we're going to take a closer look at shortly. But this is a silver dial version, one I have personally never seen before. And for that reason, I just have to keep it. What a gorgeous example. I always go on about Mido, Movado, and Doxa, and these sort of vintage brands. And the watches they were producing back in the day are some of the finest, in my opinion, especially at the price points. And when you go see what the Wyoming we have for sale is up for, and you see the quality of it, the condition, the fact it's a Francois Bourget case, you know, it ticks so many boxes and really is very, very affordable. I would highly consider them. But yeah, that's enough of what's on wrist, because I'm not going to sell this. I was wearing something the other day that I sold straight off my wrist, which was very sad. I don't like doing that, but at the same time, sometimes I've got to be realistic with myself. I can't keep everything. For example, we just got this back from repair, nice Citizen bullhead. I'm keeping it, you know, it's ridiculous. I need to stop with this. I need to sell some watches. So here we go. Let's sell some watches, shall we? Now, we've got to start with arguably one of the most special and arguably the rarest watch on the table, and that is the Louis Cartier tank. Let's take a closer look at this watch. What a incredible piece of Cartier history to begin this week's episode with. Now, as I say, this is no standard Cartier tank, if such a thing exists anyway. This is a very special PCPC. Or CPCP, sorry, which stands for Collection Privé Cartier Paris. And basically what that was is in 1998 till 2008, Cartier released some of their most historic references in the Masterpiece collection. So that's what the CPCP was. So they did them to the highest standard possible with the most beautiful finishing on the dials, but also upgraded the movements and worked with Frédéric Piguet in terms of the movement. So for example, this has a manually wound F. Piguet caliber 021. An absolutely beautiful and ultra thin manually wound movement, which just adds to the overall elegance and charm of this watch. Now, what makes this one even more special as well is a very early example dating from around circa 1998, and it is pre-Paris on the dial, so it still states the Swiss down there at 6, whilst still having the beautifully guilloche dial, which again is a very rare thing to see on the Cartier tanks. So this is all cased in 18 karat yellow gold, and it also comes with its original 18 karat yellow gold Cartier buckle, which is the standard pin buckle, which I prefer. It is a replacement strap, 18mm standard black, which really works with the design. It's quite a thick strap, it doesn't taper very much, which personally I quite like because of the size of the watch. However, a tapered strap would certainly work very well as well. So this is the reference 1600, and as I say, it dates from around circa 1998. It does come with a Cartier box. Unfortunately, no original paperwork is provided with the watch, but it is running absolutely beautiful. Original crown right there as well. And an absolutely gorgeous example. If you're in the market for a top-end Cartier tank, something that only the real passionate collectors will know about, this is something you should be considering and looking at. But that's enough for the ramble. Let's show it on wrist and talk dimensions. Here we go on my just shy of 7-inch wrist, an absolutely gorgeous watch. So the dimensions of this one are 23mm by 30mm lug to lug, only 5mm thick. It sits so low on the wrist, a true dress watch and an absolute masterpiece. 18mm on the lug, so endless options if you're not a fan of this strap. But a real gorgeous example, one well worth checking out if you're in the market for a sort of higher end Cartier tank. Yes, it's on the smaller size, but this is more traditional. This is also pretty similar to the size that Muhammad Ali would have worn. So if you think you can't pull it off, just remember Muhammad Ali wore a Cartier tank this size, and go tell him he couldn't pull it off. So go check this one out on the website. Next up, let's go to the Oyster Quartz, something really fun and funky and very much of its time, but has totally come back into fashion. Let's take a look at the still reference. Next up is a real oddball from Rolex. This is the Rolex Oyster Quartz Datejust. So these were a real weird watch when they came out. Absolutely gorgeous in design, some of the latest technology, and a real groundbreaking achievement. And as a lot of you know, there was the Beta 21 movement. That isn't what's in this, but there was the Beta 21, which sort of developed the whole Swiss and quartz era in high-end luxury watches, and as a lot of you know, it didn't go particularly well. And interestingly, with this model, when it first came out, people really loved it, and apparently it sold very well. And again, this is just based on what you can read online and people who were around at the time and work retail. Not that there's many people left of that sort of caliber in the watch world, but still, you know, the rumors go it sold very well, and then it just completely plateaued. People wanted either mechanical watches, or they didn't want a quartz watch in a Rolex. They wanted something more affordable, because the stigma was if it was ticking and it was a Rolex, it was fake, which was quite funny considering these were not fake. There's a very interesting collection on Talking Watches with Hodinkee, with one of the family buyers. I forget the exact name of him, my bad, I'll put it on screen. But anyway, he bought one of these, and again, the same thing. He went to school and people thought it was a fake Rolex, so he stopped wearing it, which is kind of amazing to think. And because of that, there wasn't a huge amount sold and a huge amount kept in good condition. So, you know, they've become more and more popular. Also, again, very ahead of its time in terms of the well, not really, considering who else was doing integrated, but very much of its time with the integrated bracelet and the integrated design, which, as everyone knows, has come back massively. Even just down to the success of the PRX from Tissot, a very affordable price range, proves that it's a sort of transcending across price, this kind of design. So absolutely gorgeous. They made a reference which was automatic in this case, which is quite rare and very expensive. However, people are coming back to these quartz models, and I think they look fantastic. The design is brilliant. One thing to keep in mind is these movements are becoming a bit more delicate as time goes on, and parts are becoming more difficult to find. So do keep that in mind when buying a watch like this. This isn't something you're probably going to be wearing every day, and it's something you probably want to be a bit more careful with and understand a bit more than most watches. But anyway, this is the reference 17014, and inside is the Rolex Oyster Quartz caliber 5035. As you can see, this still has its green Rolex caseback sticker on it. The watch does appear in very good condition. I wouldn't say unpolished. It looks to me like it's maybe been polished once in its life, but it is very, very good, that's for sure. And it's from circa 1984. Absolute gorgeous tritium lume on the dial and hands, nice screw down crown, all original, and the bracelet is a reasonable size. It's not huge. It will fit my wrist and a bit more. And also the bracelet is a little stiff in places, but that's to be expected with these older integrated bracelets. So let's show it on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go on wrist. That just puts a smile on my face because you've got a classic Datejust dial but in a very angular, sharp 70s case. And I think it really, really works. It's a shame they didn't continue this line in the automatic range. I think it would have been fantastic. But the size of this one is 36mm by 42mm lug to lug, only 12.5mm thick, and 23.5mm in the lugs tapering down to the clasp. Really beautiful, absolute great design, and one well worth checking out if you're in the market for a Rolex Datejust, but want something completely different that speaks very differently to certain collectors. So go check it out on the website today. From there, let's quickly go over to the steel and gold reference with the champagne dial, a really gorgeous example. Let's take a closer look. So after the all steel, I think it's time for a bit of Wall Street flair with this two-tone. This really just screams Wall Street to me, and it screams sort of like investment banker, not in a bad way, but in just a very sort of gordish way, but also kind of 80s. You know, it's very much of that era, and I absolutely love that. I mean, I've got a couple of two-tone watches. I've owned them in the past. I love them, and I think they're all great. I'm hoping that they actually bring out the Black Bay 58 in two-tone. I think that would look great. But anyway, back to the watch we're looking at. This is another Rolex Oyster Quartz Datejust with the two-tone and the champagne dial. The nicest configuration of the two-tone, in my opinion. You've got the rose gold. Well, it originally would have been yellow gold, but it's definitely got more pinky rose gold over time, the way it's sort of aged, which is really fascinating to see. You've got the yellow gold crown right there, yellow gold bezel, and yellow gold on the center links. But you've got to think the age, the gold mixtures they used to use are quite a bit different. I don't know if I can get that on camera. I don't know how well that's going to show. But it's definitely more coppery, more rosy, which I really, really like, and I think works really beautifully with the watch. Same details as before, apart from it's the reference 17013, and same movement inside, which is the quartz caliber 5035. No sticker on this case back. Again, very good condition. It's been polished, but polished well in the past. They've definitely not gone to town on those edges, which it always happens on these models. And this one's circa 1979, so right at the end of the 70s, going into the 80s. Again, I can just imagine this being sold to a Wall Street banker back in the 80s, someone ready to make their millions, which I think is kind of cool. But let's show on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go on my wrist. Again, super cool profile, and one I wish they had kept. Who knows, maybe they'll bring it back. How cool would that be? That would break the internet. But this is 36mm by 42mm lug to lug, 12.5mm thick, and the same 23.5mm tapering down to the clasp. Beautiful dimensions, sits very, very well, and wears a lot bigger than a 36mm would sort of lead you to believe, especially because of this integrated design. So go check it out on the website today. From there to a watch we've had before, and we've got another one in. This is the Chrono Tokyo Toki Salmondale. Let's take a closer look. Next up is a watch we have had before. So we were fortunate enough to have a brand new unworn Chrono Tokyo Toki Salmondale, and it went very quickly, and we've managed to get another one. This is also brand new and unworn, and it does come with its full box and paperwork, just like the last one. However, this one isn't still fully wrapped like the other one was, and the gentleman did try it on once, as you can see from the strap, just to see if it was something he was going to keep or not, and unfortunately it wasn't. So I would still classify this as unworn, because at the end of the day, you go into your retailers and you buy a watch out the window, which has often been tried on probably 10 or 15 times, if not more. So this is far more unworn than what they'd claim is unworn. So hopefully that makes sense. And there's the honesty. So the reference is the Toki. Inside is the automatic Miyota 90S5, part of the 9000 series. A very good movement, very reliable, and definitely of the higher end of what Miyota provide. And it's from January 2022, as I said, with its full box and paperwork. As we've already touched on one of these before, I'm not going to say an awful lot more. Go check out the website, give the write-up a read, and let's show it on wrist. And here we go on my wrist. Absolutely gorgeous. I love the Salmondale on this. It's much more pinky than most Salmondales, which I actually really like. This is 37mm by 43.5mm lug to lug, only 11mm thick and 20mm lug, so endless options on that strap. I would really look into a nice brown strap. I think it would work very, very well, but go check it out on the website today. From there, we're going to go to my favourite watch on the table, and it's going to be no surprise what it is. That is the Mido Wyoming. Let's take a closer look at that beautiful example. So as I say, one of my favourites. I've actually owned this reference multiple times in the past. However, this is the first one I've had with the full loom hands and the loom on the dial, and it's gorgeous. If it wasn't for the silver, I'd be keeping this one, but as I've got the silver, I'm going to keep that one and let one of you guys and girls enjoy this wonderful watch. So this is a Mido Multi-4 Power Wind. The reference is known as the Wyoming model. So if you give that a search, you'll see lots of advertisements and vintage adverts for that, which is really, really cool to see. And this is very oversized for its age, and we'll touch more on the sizes in a little bit, but to give you an example, 37mm for 1950s. That is big for that period. Absolute gorgeous design. Francois Bourgel case. For those of you who don't know, Francois Bourgel was a prominent case maker who made cases for brands such as Patek Philippe. So that goes to show the sort of craftsmanship that these guys were working at, and they made cases for Mido and Movado and a few other brands as well. But gorgeous nut case back, as they're called, so screw off case back. Recessed crown right in there with a Bourgel crown, as they're known. Nice drilled lug holes to make strap changing super easy. But just a really lovely example. Gorgeous starburst dial right there with textures all over it. It really screams quality. And the specific reference is the 7939, and inside is an automatic Mido caliber 917P. Mido made their own calibers and they are fantastic. They run very well. There's not as many parts out there such as, you know, Amiga and Rolex, but there's still plenty of parts and they can be repaired. And this one is running beautifully. So let's show on wrist and talk dimensions. And here we go on wrist. And I've got to be honest, I actually prefer this on my wrist than I do the silver, but the silver is just so rare and I've never seen it that I'd rather keep that one personally. But this I've always think looks nicer, especially on a brown suede. I mean, everything looks good on a brown suede. So this is 37mm by 45mm lug to lug, only 11mm thick and 18mm lugs. Beautiful proportions, especially for the 1950s, which is what makes it so special. Yet it is still so affordable. So I'd highly recommend you head over to the website and pick this beauty. From there to something I have never seen before, and it's actually a birth year watch for me. That's this 1997 not Cartier, very close, Rolex tank, as I would call it, but it's in 9-carat gold. As I say, something I've never seen before. Let's take a closer look. So as I said in the intro, something I have personally never seen before, and that is why I had to pick it up and bring it to you guys and girls. This is a 9-carat gold Seiko quartz tank, as I call them, because obviously the square case, someone else called them an ellipse, and I think I've renamed it as the ellipse because it does look more like the Patek Philippe ellipse, but it's of that ilk, you know, tanks, reversos, rectangular watches. And this one's from May 1997, which we've dated via the serial and reference number, which you can do so yourself as well. For those of you that don't know, the serial number is a long number right there at the bottom. The first 4 digits of the reference number refer to the movement, and the last 4 refer to the case reference. So this is a 593P-5A50, and that means the movement inside here is a quartz Seiko 5939. Which is a Seiko quartz caliber they've actually used for many years in many different references. Simple two-hander with a date right there. Absolutely gorgeous design, and as I say, 9-carat gold. Not something I've seen, and I suspect a lot of you guys and girls wouldn't have seen this before either. And what makes that quite interesting is there's intrinsic value just in the metal alone. You'll have to excuse the noise outside, I say every episode it feels like. But there's intrinsic value in the gold alone, around probably £200 worth of gold in this watch, which is just insane to think about. But very gorgeous piece nonetheless. There are a couple of scratches to the glass, so that is actual glass as opposed to acrylic or anything like that. So that's something to keep in mind, but let's show on wrist and talk dimensions. And here we go on my wrist. As you can see, it wears beautifully. This is 26mm by 36.5mm lug to lug, only 5.5mm thick, so super thin, and 17mm lug, so a little awkward on that lug length, but there's plenty of strap makers out there and you'll be able to find something you really like, so go check this one out on the website today. After looking at absolute gorgeous integrated Rolex quartz from the sort of 70s and 80s, it's time to have a look at something from Amiga with the integrated bracelet. This is the Amiga Geneve Automatic, reference 166091 from 1973. Absolutely gorgeous example. Now, something to keep in mind is these bracelets do definitely get tired as the time goes on. You've got to think these were worn as tools, and the only bit that was keeping these together was a spring bar with the piece of metal over there. And you've also got to think of the age of these bracelets. these were folded end links, meaning it's literally a piece of stamped metal folded around a bar, which when you sort of think of that on today's standards, that is insane. But back then, that was just the way things were done. And what it means is over time, they get worn, they stretch, and they sort of age a bit. So keep that in mind with this watch. What I can say is it is super comfortable on wrist because there is so much flex, and it really does help with wearability. You be the judge of whether you want that or not. But inside is the automatic Amiga caliber 1012, a very infamous and reliable movement, nice fold clasp, extension on the clasp. I wish brands would bring this sort of thing back, at least give us the option, because most brands now, they only give you like 2 or 3 little adjustments, whereas back in the day, look at all these adjustments they used to do. Absolutely awesome watch. Really nice sort of dial shape, which is what draws a lot of people into this reference. You've got the tourneau sort of squarish case with the actual angular dial, or more cushiony dial, which you often don't see. It's usually, you know, a more angular case with a round dial. That's sort of the traditional way of doing things, which Amiga certainly broke out of that with this model. But let's show it on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go on my wrist. So it's on the tightest at the moment. I assume on the loosest it would fit me quite comfortably because of all that extension. But there you go. Really, really cool looking watch. Great dimensions at 36mm by 43mm. So that's very similar to the Datejust we were looking at. However, it wears completely differently. It fills up much more with the wrist. It is 10.5mm thick, so super thin, and 10mm in terms of that bit right there. Much bigger on this bit, tapering down, but a gorgeous watch and one well worth checking out, especially for the money. From there to something, again, very much of its time, and it's kind of amazing to have that as the same time these Rolex Oyster Quartz, and that's the Longines Ultronic. Let's take a closer look. So I'm a massive fan of vintage Longines, especially their electronic ranges. I think they made some of the funkiest and most interesting pieces of that era, especially in the 70s, which this watch dates to. So this is a Longines Ultronic, which is a quartz watch. So it's actually a tuning fork movement. As you can see, that second hand isn't ticking, it's sweeping. And inside here is a Longines caliber 6312. Absolutely gorgeous with the pop of orange. And again, what makes it even more interesting is we tilt the watch. Hopefully you guys can see this. The indices are like bridges that sort of angle out from the top of the dial and allow the hour hand to the minute hand, sorry, to pass through underneath. Absolutely incredible, creates real depth, and that's an original electric blue dial as well. And you can see the radium has, the tritium has actually burnt the sort of lacquer they used to use on the dials. We see this across many watch brands that used blue back in the 70s, including Rolex. So it's always a good sign. You might see it, and if you're a perfectionist, it might put you off the watch, but it's actually a very positive sign. It shows that that is partly that is part of original dial. Absolutely gorgeous, and as I say, dates from 1973, and the reference is 8616.1. And let's show it on wrist and taut dimensions. And here we go on my wrist. I've actually paired it on this really interesting vintage looking brown strap, which is actually, if I'm not mistaken, a strap made of apple. And yeah, you heard that right, apple. I bought a few of these straps just to test them out, and they're actually very good quality. I'm quite surprised. So I think you guys and girls will appreciate it as well. But what an interesting looking sort of UFO shape, oblong, weird thing from the 70s. How cool is that? So this is 37mm by 44mm lug to lug, only 11mm thick and 18mm on those lugs, so plenty of options. If you're not a fan of this Apple strap, you can swap it out nice and easy, but one well worth checking out on the website today. From there to a Squale, one I've really liked actually. We had a blue one, this is the purple, and it's really, really gorgeous. Let's take a closer look. Right, on to a really good looking watch. This is the Squale Onda, and we've actually had an example of this in the past, which was the really gorgeous blue dial, which was a limited edition, whereas this is the sort of mainstream edition, if you could call it that, with the purple dial. Absolutely lovely. It's still very blue. It's got that subtle blueness to it, but it has a hint of purple. I think you guys and girls are going to absolutely love this. That sort of white silver textured bezel, which reminds me of the Yachtmaster. And inside is an automatic ETA 2824 Elaborate, which is the upgraded version of the basic 2824, decorated better and finished to a higher standard, and also regulated to a more precise rating as well. It comes paired on its original strap with its original buckle, and it does come with its box and papers from February 2020. Really gorgeous example and well worth the money. I think this sort of ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of people, and if you're looking to get into Squale, this is something to definitely consider and look at. But let's show it on wrist and talk dimension. And here we go on my wrist. The dimensions are really great on this. It wears like a modern dive watch should. It's quite big, it's a bit bulky, but it's super comfortable. I'd personally swap out the leather strap, but that's just my opinion. So this is 41.5mm by 48.5mm lug to lug, only 12.5mm thick and 20mm lug, so endless options on those straps. If you're not a fan of this brown, as I'm personally not with this colour, I'd be going with something a bit more funky, or a mesh bracelet. I think that'd look fantastic. So go check this one out on the website today. Now on to something that is amazing value for money, and we can touch on it a little bit more in a second as well, and that's the WMT Royal Marine. Let's take a closer look. So next up is this absolute gorgeous WMT super diver, or sub diver as it's called, Royal Marine, and this is very much of the Comex era type of sub that they've gone with here, pre-ceramic with this aluminium faded bezel. You've got that pumpkin style loom which is aged beautifully. They sort of false patina the whole thing and do it very, very well. It's always surprised a lot of people when I show them this watch, especially watchmakers and people who've been in the trade a long time. They don't understand how they can make something look this good at this kind of price point, and it's quite scary sometimes. Nice screw down crown, very well built bracelet as well, very much of the same sort of fashion of the Oyster bracelet from the period. Plenty of adjustment on the clasp, which is really nice. Signed screw down case back, which is housing a automatic Seiko NH35, which is nice to see because usually they're Miyotas, but this actually has the Seiko inside, which is a nice reliable movement. This one's from November 2020, and it does come with its box and papers and one spare link. Right now it's sized to fit my just shy of 7-inch wrist, and you can see where it is based on the clasp, so that gives you an indication of how big this watch will fit. But let's show on wrist and talk dimensions. And here we go on my wrist, perfectly proportioned in my opinion, at 39mm by 47mm lug to lug, 15mm thick, which is mostly due to that very high domed acrylic crystal, and 20mm lug, so endless options if you're not a fan of the bracelet. And you've also got drilled lug holes to be able to swap it out as quick as you need to. Oftentimes I see people wearing these on NATOs. It looks really good on that. However, I am a bracelet guy, so for me this would be my choice, but go check it out on the website. And last but by no means least, probably the best value watch on the table by a long shot, that is the Seiko Presage Cocktail Time. Let's take a closer look. Next up is this Seiko Presage Cocktail Time, as it's often referred to. Really gorgeous starburst silver dial with the stainless steel case and the steel on the indices and the hands. It all contrasts beautifully and really, really shines. It's such a cool looking watch. Nice exhibition case back with the Seiko caliber 4R35 inside, which features hacking and hand winding as you'd expect from a modern Seiko nowadays, and it's paired on its original strap, which is actually pretty much unworn, which is this really high gloss dark black sort of tinted blue with blue stitching, which really works with the design. Again, you'll have to excuse the noise, typical of Clerkenwell. There's a lot of people out there doing that. I have no idea why, but anyway, this is the SRPB 43J1. It's from circa 2018 with its box and unsigned paperwork. The watch is worn, as I say, but the strap isn't, so keep that in mind. This on a brown leather strap really, really works in my opinion, but let's show on wrist and talk dimensions. And here we go on my wrist. You can see it fits really, really well at 40.5mm by 47.5mm lug to lug, only 11.5mm thick, which is rather thin for an automatic Seiko, and 20mm on the lug, so nice and easy for changing straps if you're not a fan of this very high gloss black, which I'd understand. So go check it out on the website today. So there you have it, guys and girls, with all the honks and horns out there on Clerkenwell Road. It's ridiculous, but we have from £300 up to £8,500. That is what we do here at Kibble Watches, and that is what I'm so excited to be able to bring week on week. And we have some very exciting things coming up as well. We have some watches in repair which are fantastic. We have some waiting a box and an extract from Patek. Keep an eye out for what that is. And we have just so many great things coming soon, including a couple more vintage Rolexes, which are very, very special, and I can't wait to show you guys and girls. So keep your eyes peeled, and we're going to get there. So thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you all in the next episode.